Welcome back. The governor's race set to dominate the next year. More than a half dozen Democrats in the race after Governor Tony Evers said he would not seek a third term, and 2 Republicans in for now. With that, Jaron picking it up with Democratic strategist Joe Zepecki and Republican Bill McCoshen.
So we got a lot to talk about. Let's start with the governor's race, right? So, Joe, what should we make of this Democratic field now that more than a dozen people are in this candidate field? Do you think that we're going to see that continue through August?
No, I think the field is now set and is far more likely to contract before nomination signatures go out in the late spring, early summer than it is to expand anymore. I view this as an embarrassment of riches. 7 of these folks are viable, real folks who have a case to make to the voters of Wisconsin. Now, not all of them may make it to the starting line. 7 folks is a lot. You got to raise the money. You got to demonstrate support. The next 3 to 4 months, that's the ball game, is get to the starting line.
And so right now where we stand, you say you don't expect it to grow, more so shrink the candidate field. Who are the 3 or 4 frontrunners right now in the race?
Well, I think there's one frontrunner. It's Mandela Barnes until someone takes it away from him. The fact that he starts with the most name ID, the fact that he has raised the most money in his previous statewide race gives him a leg up. The thing that Mandela Barnes has in common with Jim Doyle, Tom Barrett, Mary Burke, and Tony Evers, he was in first place the day he announced his campaign. Doesn't mean he can't lose, doesn't mean Sarah Rodriguez or a Missy Hughes or a Joel Brennan or David Crowley or any of them aren't going to give him a run for his money, but Mandela starting as the front runner is where you want to be.
Bill, on the Republican side, is Tom Tiffany the front runner in this race, and will anything change that?
He's the front runner right now, but there's a few things Joe and I agree on and a few that we disagree on. The next line of demarcation for both sides is the January finance report. On our side, Tom Tiffany needs to be north of $3 million raised. And the further north he is, the better it is for him. Josh Schoeman probably needs to be in the $1.5 million range. If they're below those numbers, those are going to be viewed as missed opportunities. And that will invite more chatter on the Republican side about someone else getting in. I think Joe's field is set. I think the Democratic field is set. He and I agree that Mandela Barnes is the front runner today. Where we disagree is the people underneath him are going to have to contrast with him if they want to win. We learned in 2012 or 2022 that there were 4 candidates that spent millions and millions of dollars competing with Mandela Barnes. All of them dropped out of the race 2 weeks before the election. None of them ever hit Mandela Barnes. So the first hit he took was in the general election by Ron Johnson, and it proved he had a glass jaw. He couldn't take that hit. We're hopeful that Mandela Barnes is the Democratic nominee. He's got that today, but if someone below him wants to pass him, they have to contrast with him. I think there's 2 tiers. There's Mandela Barnes, there's Sarah Rodriguez, David Crowley, and probably Joel Brennan are in that first tier for me. I think if a lot of these candidates don't have at least $100,000 on their January report, frankly, they're done. They may not admit they're done, but they're done.
Let's talk about the state legislature here. Democrats are campaigning hard to take control of the state Senate. What are the odds that will happen, Joe?
Better than 50%. In 2024, Democrats picked up 14 seats, 4 in the Senate, 10 in the Assembly, under the fairer maps that were enacted by Robin Vos and Tony Evers. Now, with more Senate seats up for grabs, you know, only every other cycle do you get the full Senate. This is in play. And given the political environment that we are seeing, forget the polling. We've had enough elections in enough types of communities across the country in 2025. Republicans are losing everything from the mayor's office in Miami to statewide down ballot elections in Georgia to massively underperforming Donald Trump in gubernatorial races in Virginia and New Jersey. The political environment is bad for Republicans because Donald Trump's popularity is cratering.
Bill, do you agree with that, or what do you think are the odds of Democrats actually taking control of the state Senate?
Well, the last time they had control of the state Senate was in 2010. Those were what everyone considered fair maps, and Republicans beat them. The landscape was in Republicans' favor in 2010. Ron Johnson won, Scott Walker won. I still think the landscape's going to be good for Republicans in 2026. I think the economic indicators are moving in the right direction. It won't matter politically until voters feel the difference, right? They need to feel it. I don't know that they'll feel it until summertime or even early fall, but that's the opportunity for Republicans. They got to keep working on economic issues, making sure they're dealing with affordability and addressing concerns of voters. And if they do that, I think they got a very good chance to even keep the state Senate here.
Any scenario that Democrats win the Senate and the Assembly,
Yes.
what does that scenario look like?
If the political environment stays what it is today or gets worse for Republicans, Democrats will have a trifecta heading into 2027.
I don't see it. Republicans, particularly with Robin Vos at the head, have recruited better candidates with better messaging, better strategies. They've been able to maintain their majority against some bad odds in the past. My money's on the Republicans keeping the Assembly.
We've talked a lot about what's happened in 2025 and what's happening in 2026. I want to get your winners and losers of the year for 2025. We'll start with your winner and loser, Joe.
My loser is very simple, which is Speaker Mike Johnson, who has lost control of the U.S. Congress. The House of Representatives is now apparently only able to do anything by discharge petition because you have enough Republicans who are willing to buck the Speaker and leadership, whether it's the Epstein files release, whether it's on an ACA subsidies and tax credits vote. And so Mike Johnson will not be Speaker of the House after 2026, even if there is a total sea change in terms of the political environment and Republicans maintain a majority. Yeah. My hot take is Mike Johnson's going to be looking for work.
So that's your loser 2025. What's your winner of 2025?
My winner may surprise some people, which is Josh Kaul, the Attorney General of the state of Wisconsin, who has been sort of at the forefront of the legal pushback on the Trump administration and did one of the hardest things to do in politics, which is take a pass on a run for higher office. Attorney General Josh Kaul has won statewide. He would have gotten into the governor's race with a lot of advantages.
As the leader.
As the leader.
Yeah.
And I think I respect the heck out of anybody who is willing to say, you know what, ambition can't be the only thing. I'm in an important job. I'm good at it. And I just tip my cap to that because I don't think we see enough of that in politics today.
No. Bill, your winner and loser of 2025.
My winner, U.S. DOT Secretary Sean Duffy. He came in his second day on the job. We had the tragedy at DCA in Washington, D.C., a crash between an airplane and a military helicopter. He's instantly in crisis. I think he has seen multiple crises during his 12 months and found a way to manage through those and articulate to the American people, you know, that safety is their number one concern at US DOT. Plus, he was able to get $12.5 billion to upgrade our air traffic control system. So I think Sean Duffy is absolutely a winner. He's coming out as a really solid member of the cabinet. And, you know, that might surprise some people. It doesn't surprise me. I've known him a long time. So he's my winner. My loser are property taxpayers in the state of Wisconsin. I think the governor's 400-year veto is now arriving in everyone's mailbox. Your property tax increase for 2025 is anywhere between 11% and 28%, depending on where you live. That is sticker shock, and that's going to happen every year for the next 399 unless a Governor Tiffany or a Governor Shulman gets in there and reverses that.
Last thing, person to watch for 2026.
I'm going to go national, and I will go with Gavin Newsom. The governor of California had a very good 2025. I think a lot of people on my side now view him as the person who helped themselves the most in the presidential sort of pre-primary ahead of 2028. He has been unafraid, unabashed to take on the Trump administration, and that is a good opening act. What does he do as a follow-on in 2026? I think a lot of people are going to be watching that.
Mine's Susie Wiles, White House Chief of Staff. She is the first female Chief of Staff in U.S. history. Most people credit her with making the 47 administration far less chaotic and more organized than the 45 administration. You know, does she leave in 2026? Does she stay through the midterms? I think she's been a rock for President Trump, and there's no question she's been an asset for Republicans nationally. So my hope is she stays at least through the summer, but maybe even through the year. Watch Susie Wiles.
Gentlemen, always great to have your insight and your analysis. Democratic strategist Joe Zepecki, Republican strategist Bill McCoshen. Happy holidays.
You too.
Happy holidays.
Up next, the new AI dispatchers in one Wisconsin county.